look at this movie. Wow, check it out. It's Reservoir Dogs. Those Reservoir Dogs are coming for you. I'm sure you've probably seen the poster for this movie somewhere at some point, and you probably saw it in between a Scarface poster and a Bob Marley poster, and it was probably in a dorm room or some sort of small house that smelled like cigarettes. This was Quentin Tarantino's first big movie, and of course there's plenty of discussion to be had about its merits, but unfortunately this video isn't about the movie, it's about the 2006 video game they made based on it. If you're anything like me, then your first thought upon discovering the existence of this game was probably, why? Some people wanted to develop a game based on one of Quentin Tarantino's movies, so of course they have to ask themselves the question, which movie of his would work best adapted into a game? None of them? So then let's back up and rephrase the question here. Which of his movies can we manipulate and misrepresent in such a way that it could work as a game? And of course, the only possible answer is Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs is a great answer to a very cynical question. And if you're thinking, well, what about Inglourious Bastards? Well, you can shut your goddamn mouth, because it didn't exist at this point in time yet. This was 2006. The world was a very different place. People were still freaking out all the time about depictions of sex and violence in video games, and I suspect the game's controversy probably helped secure a lot of its sales. Of course, nowadays this game seems quite tame. The movie was similarly controversial when it came out in 1992, and again seems tame compared to media that has conditioned us since then, and that's probably the closest parallel between the movie and the game. Beyond this, they don't really have a whole lot of similarities. So, a violent movie centered around a diamond heist could theoretically work well as a video game, but the movie isn't really about the heist itself, it's more about the events leading up to and following the heist. The game was marketed as having a story that sort of filled in the blanks of the movie, and that's how they were going to get the interest of the fans of the film, by expanding its canon. But I would describe the levels of the game as tonally inconsistent with the film.
I'm sorry. I can't believe she killed me, man. Who the fucking got that?
Hey, just cancel that shit right now. You're hurt real fucking bad, but you ain't dying.
I'm gonna die. I'm gonna...
Yo, motherfucker, you better watch out, those Reservoir Dogs. They're coming to get you. You can't put a leash on these Reservoir Dogs. They're coming out of the reservoir and they're coming right for you, motherfucker. It's all nonsense. The game is just total nonsense that just uses the movie and the characters as a way of packaging it all together for you. You probably already have a pretty good idea of what type of quality to expect from a game that's based on a movie, and if that's the case, then this game is going to be completely unsurprising to you. Like so many other games based on movies, if you take away all the elements of the game that actually relate to the movie, the cutscenes, characters, story, whatever, all you're left with is a bunch of boring, generic poo-poo. So let's actually assess the gameplay. The game begins during the robbery that the film is centered on. Mr. Blue grabs some lady and throws her on a table because that's how you know it's go time, baby! Most of the game just involves you running through a bunch of dull environments like back alleys and generic industrial buildings comprised of ugly grays and browns, shooting at an endless supply of cops, and that's kinda it. I mean, just look at the game's objectives. Head through Lou's gas station and find a back door. Make your way down the farm road through the old rail shed. Find the door. Get to the fucking other side of this room. Go through the alleyways. Make your way through this fucking building. Go down the street, then go in a building. Now find this other fucking door. Get out through the alleys. Cross the street. Go through these other alleys. Then go through this building. Those aren't objectives. Those are directions. The objectives never involve interacting with the environment or other characters in any meaningful way. They're all just go over here, go over there, accept your fate. This is all the game is. Your character has this meter that he fills up by shooting people that lets him perform a fancy slow-mo shooting trick, but I deliberately avoided using it because the jerky and awkward camera when you use the ability felt like it was giving me whiplash. You've also got your standard evasive roll maneuver, which in this game is comically overpowered. It's like these cops have never seen anybody roll before in their life, and it just confuses them to the point that they don't even know where to shoot. One of my favorite parts about the game is just rolling around and rolling up to people and grabbing them. Rolling around everywhere is kind of the optimal strategy for the game. You can just roll around all over the place and grab whoever you want and no one can really stop you. This is no exaggeration. I was literally able to play through the entire game without shooting a single enemy, instead just rolling around whenever I was getting shot at. Sir, we've located one of the robbers, but we just can't shoot him. Why the hell not, Sanchez? He just keeps contorting and rotating his body. Our training didn't prepare us for that kind of tactic. Dear God. Sir, he's holed up in that supply closet. What should we do? Send everybody into that closet right now! To call the game's AI bad is kind of an insult to the word bad, which I'm told can also mean good in certain contexts. Since I mentioned rolling around and grabbing people, we should probably talk about the one mechanic that's at least a little unique. Basically, you can grab any NPC to take as a hostage, and this allows you to use them as cover and manipulate the movement of other enemies. So, on paper, it sounds like a nice way of jazzing up the gameplay a little bit, right? Well, sure, but the problem is there's not really much reason to use the mechanic at all throughout the game. It's very easy to get through the entire game without taking a single hostage, and this makes the mechanic feel like it was just tacked on late in development. Occasionally you run into keypads or locks that can be unlocked by taking certain NPCs hostage and getting them to unlock it for you, but you can also just shoot every single one of them to open them, so that was what I did. Taking a hostage does give you extra protection, sure, but it also really slows you down, and the last thing you're going to want to do while you're playing this game is prolong your time with it. In fact, I became so obsessed with playing as little of this game as possible that I am now the world record speedrunner for this game. I suppose you could say the most merciful thing about this game is that it is very short. The first time I played through it took me about 3 or 4 hours. So the shooting levels in the game alternate with driving sequences, which I found to be much more enjoyable because, I mean, they work on a basic level. The physics are pretty wonky, but it's functional. There is a good possibility that I only think I enjoyed the driving segments of the game simply because they weren't the shooting segments. The shooting segments are just a boring and miserable slog through uninspired locations, and when the driving parts show up, you're just happy to have something else. Unfortunately, throughout these driving levels, you have to tolerate the character's asinine dialogue.
At least these guys know how to drive. I was with this chick. Real nympho. She was turning tricks for a year or so. Had a real classy piece of ass. We parked down this dark alley. We start kissing and stuff, and then she starts, you know.
What? What was she doing?
You know what the fuck she was doing.
The voice acting in general is annoying, especially Mr. Pink, who's supposed to be Steve Buscemi.
I got a bag, okay? I stashed the goods to be sure this place wasn't a police station.
Alright, mister, who the hell are you and what have you done with Steve Buscemi? Actually, none of the characters resemble the original actors, except for Michael Madsen for some reason, which makes me wonder what was going on with Michael Madsen's life that made him accept this job. Wow, you were able to afford Michael Madsen? Oh, we don't pay him. We just occasionally drip feed him cocaine and he just sticks around. There's no cocaine coming out of this thing. You say your goddamn lines and you'll get your goddamn cocaine, Michael! In all fairness to Michael Madsen, he presumably got some sort of paycheck for what must have been the absolute bare minimum of effort. Every time his character speaks, he sounds like he's just bored out of his mind. And the more you play the game, the easier it becomes to empathize with him.
Man, someone should employ you as a chauffeur.
The game was clearly intended to cash in as fan service for people who've seen the movie, but I don't see how even the hugest Reservoir Dogs fan could gain anything from playing this game, unless you're interested in watching a strange alternate reality version of Reservoir Dogs that was acted by vaguely humanoid monsters. Yikes! So, in summary, the game is pure exploitation. It's clear the developers didn't really understand anything about what makes the movie actually work. As another example of this, they really go for quantity over quality when it comes to the overall violence. The violence in the movie is less frequent, but it's far more effective because it's often unexpected and messy. And that's how you portray violence that the viewer really feels. The game's violence is just mindless and repetitious and glorified, so while I was playing, I felt kind of like the game was trying to brainwash me into becoming a mindless killer. Oh my god, the 2006 people were right all along! They tried to warn us! Like many good storytellers, Quentin Tarantino understands that you don't need to explain everything. Sometimes it's better to leave a little ambiguity or mystery for the viewer. There's nothing wrong with leaving gaps in the narrative, and rather than appreciate that, the developers sought to exploit those gaps that existed. And hey, they managed to fit an obscene amount of gratuitous violence and car chases and explosions into those gaps, and I can only respect that. But the most important thing the developers didn't understand, though, was how to make a fun or interesting shooter, so even ignoring the failures in every other respect, the game fails at its most basic functions. The game's shittiness was often pretty amusing, though, and it is kind of fascinating as a disturbing alternate portrayal of the film that's basically the total opposite. Whereas the film focuses on characters and dialogue rather than car chases and violence, the game does the opposite. While the movie exemplifies a high standard of artistic craftsmanship, the game is the opposite. In simplest terms, the movie's good, and the game is, well... So I suppose it's up to you to decide whether my recommendation that you don't play this game is sincere, or if this whole video was just a giant lie to discourage people from taking away my speedrun record. And in case you were interested, I streamed my entire first playthrough of the game as well as every single speedrun attempt on our Twitch channel, so you'll find a convenient link to that in the video description. If you're watching this video right after it's been posted, I would suggest you follow that link right now because I'm streaming right now to try and set a new world record for this game, so come on and join us. We'll have a bit of fun with it before I finally decide to give up on this game forever.
Alright, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. You know what time it is.